focus so much about the the rational thinking, we forget that we are not actually rational beings. We are emotional beings before we restrict ourselves to feel in our body. And I think that's the key to access to your subconscious mind. You have to know that hypnosis is not at all what you see on the TV.
Meet Siam Lee, a master hypnotherapist guiding people into the depths of their subconscious to heal deep-seated trauma and rewire the mind for transformation.
Bring consciousness into your subconscious. That's how you're gonna improve your life. I connect the person to a feeling. And what is crazy is like the right emotion is always 100% connected to a memory. And that's where you go.
So how do we actually take action against our natural attraction pull towards toxic subconscious coping mechanism?
The only way to heal a trauma is to reconnect to the trauma, to re-trigger the trauma, but not in the reality, just in your brain.
I see all these like videos of people shaking and screaming and being in their subconscious, I guess. What exactly is happening?
It's just energy in your body. The intelligence of this energy, the prana. The moment you understand the power of your emotion and the better you start to creating new reality into your world, you are your own healer, and all those kind of stuff is just something to help you, to give you a push. It's not the science that creates life. Science is just a limited perception from what we can understand right now, and in 50 years we're going to understand more and more and more.
Siam, welcome to the show. Welcome to Visionary Voices. Very, very happy to have you here and interview. Tell us a bit about yourself. What are you doing and who are you?
Sure. So my name is Siam Lee. I'm a hypnotherapist, but I'm also a breathwork coach. I'm doing also Kundalini spinal energy session. And basically, I'm really specialized about how to heal, trauma from the past, emotional wounds, how to reprogram our subconscious. So I help a lot of entrepreneurs and people in general, but I like to focus on entrepreneur, conscious leader, try to understand better about themselves,
It's so important, and that's also the core of this show.
Yes.
To reconnect creators specifically, because everything we create in our reality originates from within. So it all depends on, have we healed? What place are we creating from? How present are we when we create? And especially entrepreneurs, visionaries, artists, people that are already creating. It's so important to reconnect. Yeah.
Exactly.
So big topics for today. Let's talk about the subconscious. I've heard different statistics and basically they're all saying 95% of our daily actions, behaviors, patterns, they all originate from the subconscious. So basically, our subconscious governs 95% of actions and behaviors we do while we're awake every day.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
It is.
So I feel like a lot of people don't even realize they're unaware of how much they follow every day these subconscious patterns of thinking, of behaving, of feeling. And sometimes we realize it very late, in life, that we keep repeating cycles. We catch ourselves, I'm again in this situation. How did I get here? Yeah. And obviously it's coming from the subconscious. So to change something in our, daily life, to actually go from surviving to thriving, to realize our visions, we need to access our subconscious mind and reprogram it for success.
Yeah.
And to heal our traumas, to really access the deeply engraved thought patterns and behavior patterns. So I'm obsessed with this topic right now. I want to, also for my personal healing, I want to learn all the possible ways of how to access our subconscious, how to really get to the engraved, patterns, traumas that were infused to us from our environment. Still, it's so deeply engraved that it's really hard to access. Even through meditation, it takes sometimes really a long time. And how to reprogram it.
How to reprogram it.
Yes, so tell us, what ways have you found in your career and personal life to access the subconscious mind and ways of actually reprogram it?
Yeah, good question. And it's a big topic, but I like to say that the process actually, it's simple, but it's not easy. So your subconscious is always there, like you say, even when you're sleeping, when you have dreams, this is basically the message of your subconscious. But what I found, I think even in my journey or with my client, is like we have this kind of big belief that we are kind of like controlling whatever we think, whatever we are doing, our habit. We know we're putting so much importance on the conscious mind.
Yes.
Thinking that my mind is saying this, I believe that I'm doing consciously stuff. And I would say that's the big trap, because you think that you taking an action or that you are making a decision with your conscious brain, but actually that's just on the surface. Truly, we always take our decision, even our choice in life with basically our subconscious mind and our emotion. Understand there is subconscious mind. I like to call it sometimes, the emotional brain, to make it easy.
Yeah.
Because subconscious is a big topic, but just think about your emotion. How do you feel in life? And most of the time, we're staying in the brain, we like here, and we kind of like restrict ourselves to feel. We restrict ourselves to feel in our body. And I think that's the key to access to your subconscious mind. It's not about what you think, it's about what you feel. And so many people, especially, in entrepreneur or, in this world where we focus so much about the brain, the rational thinking, we forget that we are not actually rational beings. We are emotional beings before. And understand that emotion is basically the way we learn how to survive through generations and generations. And once you understand that, understand also that your emotional brain will always have some kind of like priority. You know what I mean? So it's how you feel that makes you take a decision rather than what you think rationally. And that's where people, have this conflict. We call it conflicting beliefs. So maybe your mind think like, I should develop a business or I should create my idea. But the body and the emotion is telling, wait a minute, I don't feel enough. I'm scared. I fear. How people is going to react? Maybe they're going to judge us, and that kind of survival instinct is kind of like hitting you and restricting you basically to take action. So it's very important, like you said, to access to the core and to heal basically. So it can be trauma, emotional wounds from your past. And the best way to access, again, is like reconnect to your body. Breathe. That sounds like, again, simple, but it's not easy. So I would say breathe, focus on how you feel. And that's, I would say, the door to understand what is your subconscious is thinking.
It's very interesting. Also, I see a very dangerous pattern right now that a lot of entrepreneurs try to do. They try to cut off from the emotions because they keep getting in the way or in the focus from the goal. And I see there's such a big disconnect in a lot of businesses right now. They really try to focus on whatever they try to focus on, money, success, numbers, reaching a specific goal, and you can see and feel it's disconnected from their core, from their true purpose, their true meaning. That's also the reason for this show, to really start with what's truly important. So why is it that people confuse emotions with, try to kind of get away from them because or numb them, or don't feel?
Good
because
question.
they distract us also from sometimes our rational goals.
Of course. And actually that's a weird pattern, but understand that your subconscious mind has a weird, like I would say, role. So somehow it's trying to always attract you to something that is familiar to you, even though it's not good for you. So you might, especially in relationships, sometimes you might be attracted with people who is actually like toxic for you, who is like maybe, blaming you all the time, make you feel like bad. But because you're used to that, your subconscious belief is kind of like, it's familiar. Even though it's not good for me, and subconsciously you're attracted to that. There's another role of the subconscious mind. Somehow it's trying to move you away from the pain. So if you feel, let's say, not enough, then all your emotion will push you somehow to try to cope with that and try to get away from the pain of not feeling enough. And if, let's say, as an entrepreneur, I'm starting to make a lot of money and I start to attract success or followers, and I feel like, when I have that, when on Instagram I have a lot of likes, then it put me out of this pain. Then I start to identify this pattern as something that I need to do. And it's kind of like how you create addiction. And it is an addiction when you start to work all the time, not having balance in your life. And that's what happened with a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of entrepreneurs actually become successful. But if you look into the past, they try like to cope with something. They're trying to avoid that. So we learn somehow how to now really take care of the negative emotion, but we are good to try to avoid it. And we try to find a coping mechanism, a pattern, that can be in work, in drugs and whatever, and that's what happened. And we're not really listening our emotion.
Yes. Let's dive deeper into that because it's also a very personal and deep topic for me right now in my life. So here's the question. If we develop coping mechanisms, especially with trauma, especially childhood trauma, when some really extreme dramatic event happens to us and we don't know how to deal with it, usually as children we don't know how to deal with it, we go into survival mode and we develop out of compulsion a coping mechanism, how to survive, you know, because extreme situations put us in this survival mode. We get used to these coping mechanisms and we keep repeating them, and these coping mechanisms and even this trauma feels very familiar to us. Like you said, we kind of engrave it as something that we know. So we keep falling back into subconscious patterns throughout our whole life if we don't heal, if we don't go back to this place and actually reprogram this trauma or this coping mechanisms. And we keep doing these same cycles and patterns. So how do we break these coping mechanisms? The first step is awareness, you know, to become aware of your own coping mechanisms and patterns and traumas, where it's from. But I realize it's not enough. We need to actually take action, and to kind of rewire our brain, we need to take different action that we usually do to kind of break these cycles. But it's so incredibly hard to go against our natural impulse to follow. Let's say pain feels familiar to you, so you always keep attracting it back into your life subconsciously. Logically, of course, you don't want any pain in your life. You don't want to attract toxic relationships. Logically, of course, it doesn't make sense. But subconsciously, we still do it. So how do we actually take action against our comfort zone, against our natural, you know, attraction pull towards toxic subconscious coping mechanisms?
Great question. I like that because a lot of people, again, try to solve this issue with the logical brain. And the logical brain will say like, okay, wait, you attract a toxic relationship. Now you know that is wrong for you. Just don't go for it. It doesn't work. It doesn't fucking work. And usually I would say that there is this period of time when you go into your self-development or your healing journey, which is very frustrating because now you understand. Before you were ignorant, so it was still, okay, I don't even realize, so that's fine. But the moment you start to realize, oh shit, it's me who was attracting the wrong people, or it's me who's creating this situation. And then you kind of like clueless because you want to change, but you have no clue how to change. And that's a big problem. And the logical mind wants to tell you something very logical again, but that doesn't work like that. So the way you have to do it is basically, it's not in the moment, it's not when the trauma is triggered that you can change. Because once the trauma is triggered, you are in the survival mode. And like I told you, the emotional brain will always take over your rational thinking. So it's going to be very hard to do it on this moment. And that's why I would say like hypnosis, for example, is a very powerful tool, because what you have to do is reprogram your brain, but when you are in a safe place. Because understand that the brain, you know, the neuroplasticity of the brain can only work the moment you are not in basically a trigger. I don't know if you're aware of that, but we have like two different nervous systems. So I like to talk also about subconscious mind, very intricate with like the nervous system. Nervous system is actually even, I would say, our unconscious brain. That's how the nervous system is going to react. If you are in the sympathetic nervous system, which is the nervous system that basically is leading when you are like in fear, when you are, you know, in fight, flight mode, there's no way that you're going to change any pattern at this moment, because all your energy
system shuts down
into
this pattern.
Exactly. It's just react.
Yes.
The way you have survived until here. We don't have time to understand a new concept, and that's why people make a huge mistake. You need to be in your parasympathetic nervous system. Basically, this is, you know, the nervous system that is activated when you are resting, when you're sleeping, when you are meditating, and that's the moment you can reprogram your brain. So hypnosis is very powerful for that, because you basically kind of like give a space for yourself to re-trigger the trauma, but not in the reality, just in your brain. So basically you go into this
Is it imagination?
It is, completely. But trauma is always an imagination. Even in real, it's your imagination that is projecting the fact that, oh, there is a danger, but most of the time it's not true.
It's
you know what I mean? So it's a perception.
Engraved, yeah.
Exactly. It's like an anticipation about what potentially could be a danger.
Based on the memories we have.
Based on the memory, based on the trauma that you've been through, based on the experience that you had. So it's very important to use actually your imagination. Like as you are meditating or you go in under hypnosis, it's kind of like the same thing that happened in your brain. And when you have this kind of safe space to trigger the trauma and then give another meaning to what happened, understand something different, give a new perspective. So because you have like a therapist that is helping you to give you another perspective, that's where it's going to have a click. In the brain it's going to be, I used to think that way. I felt like I was in danger, but all of a sudden, I can breathe and I can give the new information to my nervous system that might be not as dangerous I used to think when I was a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where you create this safe space to send new information, and your nervous system, react differently.
Yeah.
And it happened like in session, my clients, sometimes they have like some movement, they feel, the breath, all of a sudden they, I can breathe, I feel something different. And it's all about your imagination. That's what is crazy.
Yeah, I love that. I love imagination and
it is.
envisioning stuff and also visualization. I have so many questions. Okay, first of all, let's talk a little bit just really quickly about the difference, the two nervous systems.
Yeah.
So obviously our body also has its own intelligence, and the body keeps the score.
Yes.
I don't know if you know the book, it's a really good book. So
Love it.
all the trauma, we actually literally physically store it in our body.
Yeah.
Our body remembers the trauma. So what is the difference between our body remembering the trauma and storing it and our subconscious storing the trauma?
So there's something that is very interesting to understand is like before we have a brain in the evolution, we were just like, I would say, kind of warm just with the nervous system. So all the species on Earth that we come from are basically a nervous system before being a brain. And I would say like with the evolution, slowly, the nervous system start to create an extension that start to be a brain. That's very interesting to understand that. So you understand why I like to call that the nervous system as the first brain. This is the most important. This is the one that will always take over your rational thinking. This one, I would say it's more like a modern brain that we develop after. And that's why it's so important to feel and to understand that this is your body that stores the traumas. Yeah. Because that's the role of the nervous system, make you survive, that's it. Everything that happened here is more like, it is just to conceptualize stuff, to understand, mathematics, to understand something that is useful as a human being, I would say, but not as a species to survive. And emotion is not something that only us as a human being have, like animal, and especially mammalian, they have it. I like what you say, and I truly believe that. And when I work with spinal energy, all these kind of things, like that's just crazy how you understand the body has a different intelligence.
Yeah.
Very powerful, but I would say also very different from what happened in the brain.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. So the key to reprogram and take action for a new, different outcome in regards to that specific trauma that happened, kind of imagine a different outcome and embody it, is to create space, right?
Space and safety.
Space and safety to understand that whatever happened in this specific trauma back in your childhood or in this specific space and time was just then.
Yeah.
So we store it, of course, I don't know if it's the animalistic part in us that we store it, and we will try to protect ourselves from this or any similar situation that will happen in the future. And we immediately associate it with this specific moment. But to understand that maybe we were in danger, but it's just for this moment in time, and we kind of need to disconnect the trauma from any future situations. So the key to that is creating space and safety.
Safety is the most important, because again, understand that the nervous system, that's the most important role that it has, is to make you feel safe. The moment you feel a danger, trauma is actually not what happened, it's how you react to it. So the same situation for two different people, someone will react with the trauma, another one will not react with trauma. Again, because for the evolution, it's always good to have two different, I would say, outcome for a same situation. So that's why sometimes I would say the talking therapy doesn't really work, because when you're trying to say you have a trauma because of that, that's not true. The only way to know if you have a trauma is how do you feel? You need to connect the person through the memory and understand do you still feel you know, like the trauma.
Yeah.
If you don't feel it, it's not a trauma.
How would you explain in a short sentence what is trauma?
Trauma is like the way you react. Trauma is just, I would say, at the moment you live an experience, is a really strong reaction with a lot of emotion. And understand, emotion is hormones basically that happens in your body, and like you say, the body store everything. So let's say you have a lot of adrenaline, you know, and all of a sudden, like the body store that because, I don't know, you were in a plane, and all of a sudden there's also a lot of cortisol for the stress, and all of a sudden you start to say, oh, that's danger, you know, that's a danger, we almost die. It's a belief, it's an experience, and then the body store that.
Yeah.
And then after 10 years after, you go to the plane, and it's always the same. You feel that you're scared because your body has stored the memory that this situation is a danger for your body, for your life. So this is the trauma. Trauma is not in itself something bad, it's just a coping mechanism to survive. The problem is like when this mechanism kind of like spoil your life because all of a sudden it doesn't make any sense, you know. You're always scared of the same thing and you're not taking action, and you staying in your comfort zone, and you never take a new action, you know, basically to live your life. So I say it's a very good strategy to survive, but it's not a good strategy to live your life.
100%.
Yeah.
So how does hypnotherapy work? How does hypnosis work if we can truly reprogram our mind in this safe space, like you said, and create a different illusionary outcome first to create this necessary space to the pain and trauma? Maybe you can explain us how does hypnotherapy work and why is it so powerful?
Yeah. So first of all, you have to know that hypnosis is not at all what you see on the TV. It's nothing about the therapist having, you know, kind of control, because a lot of people have this fear. They say, oh, I don't want to do like hypnosis because I'm scared that someone's going to go inside my mind.
Maybe that's another trauma response.
Yeah, somehow,
me,
yeah, maybe.
Like, I don't trust.
Exactly, I don't trust.
Like,
if you have trust issue, exactly. And it's very important that you trust the person in front of you. Because what we are doing basically, again, is opening a space. I mean, as a therapist, I don't go inside the mind of my client. I don't have this power, you know, it would be too easy. But what I do is more that I understand how to create a safe space, trust, so the person can relax the nervous system. And once they relax the nervous system, what is going to happen is like quite like a spectacular. I connect the person to a feeling. So let's say you want to work on your fear of, I don't know, talking, public speaking, for example, talking in front of people. All the time you have to maybe make a live, a podcast is kind of, I have my heart that accelerates, I have all this thought that, you know, I'm going to be a failure, I sweat, I cannot talk. That's the response of your nervous system. I'm going to connect you to this feeling. You're going to close your eyes, you're going to be very relaxed. And what is crazy is like when you connect to the right emotion is always 100% connected to a memory. And that's where you go. You connect to the feeling, and with the feeling, you're going to ask the feeling, connect me to a memory in my past.
Does it happen automatically?
Yeah.
Or like what if you cannot remember this memory?
That's what is crazy. It's impossible. What happens is the access to the memory, that is, if consciously you try to remember, if I'm asking you, try to remember why you were scared of public speaking, you're not going to remember.
You know.
But if you go, okay, try to connect to the feeling. Okay, imagine that you are speaking in public and see how you feel. Now that you're connected to the emotion is always connected to your subconscious. It's as if you have to go through your emotion to the body to access, you know, it's like the key to open the right information. And most of the time it happened that, you know, I thought it was because of that, but actually it's another memory that come, and I never realized like how this memory when I was a kid, for example, I give you an example, one of my clients, it was because she has to talk, you know, in front of the school, and all of a sudden everyone start to make fun of her, and she didn't realize, she thought it was like just, it's just a memory, like, I don't know, sometimes I think about it, but she was not connected to the emotion. But once you go under hypnosis, it's kind of like you let the nervous system really showing you and let the emotion comes. And some people, they start to burst into tears and they don't understand. They say, I didn't realize that this particular moment has stored so much emotion in my body. And when you release the energy, because emotion is energy, you know, it's nothing woo, it is energy. You feel the emotion, you let go the emotion, and then once you make space for the body to learn a new perspective, that's where, you know, you can reprogram the nervous system or the subconscious mind. You can give a new information, and that's what we do in hypnotherapy. That's why it's so powerful.
So the key is to create a new outcome, right? Or a new information to this, a new reaction to this specific situation?
Yes, but you have to respect a certain process. You cannot have a shortcut, like when we talk about positive affirmation. So many people, they take the shortcut. They say, if I want to manifest the life I want, I'm just going to say I'm a millionaire. And, it doesn't work. Why? Because you didn't connect to the emotion and you didn't let go of the emotion from the past.
Originated place where it first, I guess, got triggered for the first time.
Yeah.
What about multi-generational trauma? So this is a bit more complicated. It's like, okay, I see patterns, not just in my life, that are really, really toxic and not good for me. I don't want to have them. I analyzed it, where it's coming from, and now I see, wow, it's not just me, it's my mom, it's all the women in my family. How do we break these really, really deep cycles, multi-generational cycles? And to be specific, we can dive into the topic maybe of relationships. Maybe you can talk about, toxic relationships, why it keeps happening and why we feel so comfortable in this pain. But logically, I mean, it doesn't make sense, and it goes against our survival even. It's not productive. It's not, it's this confusion, this illusion of, oh, this feels like home, even though,
That's what you're saying. It's interesting. Logically, it doesn't make any sense. But again, if you want to survive, it's always better to stay in something that is familiar. And even though the relationship is toxic, that's still the way how women learn how to survive. I have like a man that protect me, let's say, even if this man is toxic, like you have to please them, or you have like to basically make sure that he's still gonna be around, because if he leaves you, the nervous system will feel like, abandonment, rejection, and all that is kind of like red flag for the nervous system. Is like, oh, how are we gonna survive? Because as a woman, we learn from generation and generation that we need a man to survive. You understand?
It's also subconscious programming.
It is completely, 100%.
And even this anxious attachment style that we don't want to be left alone at all costs, like this is even worse than dealing with the pain of,
not being good in a relationship. It's better to not being good in a relationship, even, though like...
But that's, again, a trauma, right? So this fear of abandonment, where does that resonate from?
So I would say, think about that. As a human species, we learn how to survive in a group, since generation and generation. And think about like, what is like the worst thing that can happen to a people? And when we want to punish people, we kind of excommunicate people. In a religion, is like the worst thing that you can have is like, oh, if you're different, you kind of like away from the community. You don't belong to us anymore. You go to jail. The society will punish you. Separation
from humanity, basically.
From the community, from the group. And that is, it's like, it is like a trauma, but it's a collective trauma.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Interesting.
Collective trauma, and is what we see also on the TV, on the book,
all the time,
all the story, all the time,
Yeah.
Exactly. And it becomes a collective trauma because you understand like, oh, if the community is pushing me away or think that I'm different, maybe I'm a witch, maybe I'm, all this kind of thing is like so ingrained into our brain.
We start believing it.
Exactly. We're believing it and we are scared of that. So we develop this coping mechanism that is better to please other people, think that I'm like them. And that's why today, so many people, they're actually not who they are. They can't be authentic with who they are because they are scared about what we're going to think about them. So coming back to your question, and I like this question because I had to face that also, the transgenerational trauma, it's very deep. It's because you grew up in an environment where you heard like your grandmother, your mother, and maybe your aunties, telling you like, oh, be careful of the man, or they will like teach you a lot of things. And I believe also that in the DNA, we store also some information. You agree with me that today, why you have like these eyes, why you have this hair, it's coming from information. But traumas is something that is stored in our DNA for sure. And today we can understand that. It's very controversial. A lot of people will not be agree, but for what I see with my patient, for me, it's like it's obvious.
So, is it possible to heal these even deeply ingrained in our DNA traumas, or, I mean, in our lifetime? Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Is it possible?
It is
Completely heal.
So, sometimes now I don't like to use the word healing, because healing, it's meaning that there's something that is, I would say, sick. And I don't think like trauma is a sickness. Trauma is just, like I say, a coping mechanism. What we need to learn is to regulate our nervous system. So it's not about like not feeling any pain or not being scared about anything. That's
but
actually,
it can make us sick.
it can make you sick. That's another thing. It's like, I think we can talk about that. Of course, you will develop like some physical symptoms, but that's another topic.
Yeah.
But I would say that we need to acknowledge that trauma is just a coping mechanism, is the way of survival. But the problem is just if you're not doing anything, it's going to become like something like, with too much stress. And that will cause, like you said, some disease. But you can, I would say, upgrade yourself from that, update your nervous system and your subconscious to understand that, okay, all the women of my family used to think that we cannot stand for ourselves. We have to please a man, or, we cannot basically survive without men.
Or even this instinct to help. It's even a maternal instinct. Oh, this person is broken. It's my task now to help.
Yeah,
even though it's on my cost, I will
Yeah.
put myself aside.
Yeah.
And this becomes also a pattern, a cycle that the more often you do this action, the more easier you will fall back into.
Yeah.
And if this gets passed on to your children and so
Exactly.
on. So how do we break this multi-generational
Again, the same.
traumas?
How do you feel? The question is like, and you can do this exercise, when you watch like this podcast, if you end up in this pattern that is very common, and especially with women, but not only, because a lot of men have this pattern that what we call the savior. All the time that's something you feel that I need to help, I need to do this, and even if it costs you a lot. How does that feel if you're not doing it? And you will see that maybe, exactly. And guilty is one of like the lower energy emotion that you have, basically, that, and you need to heal from the guilt. Understand where does it come from, and you're gonna realize like, oh, it comes from this, from that. Again, it's exactly the same process. Connect to the emotion and see where this emotion is connected from, what experience you have. And sometimes, I don't know if we can talk about that, but sometimes it comes from different life, I would say. It's so weird, how the subconscious mind basically understands stuff. So I'm not saying I don't know this, I don't know. I don't know if it's like past life. I don't know if it's life that you just, with your imagination, project. That's a big topic. We can talk forever, about that. I don't have an answer for that. I want to be honest. I don't know. But what I see is like when I did that, I was connected to memory that has nothing to do with my life.
Yeah.
But the emotion that was stored in my body was like if it was a real trauma. I was connected to memories where I was a slave, I was raped, I was like, even a woman. And that created a lot of anxiety and injustice inside me. And I was still reacting with this injustice in the real life. So the most important, I would say, from my side is not to understand if it's like truth, I let that for other people, but I understand 100% that it has an effect on people. And
if it's affecting you right now, today, in everyday life, and blocking you from living your life the way you truly want to live, then of course you need to do something about it, no matter where it comes from.
Exactly. It's not important, I would say.
Yeah. Although it is interesting. I wanted to ask, how did you get there? Was it a deep hypnosis?
Yeah. With hypnosis. With hypnosis, you can guide. Sometimes I do some guidance like that to try to understand, like try to remember, even if it's not your life, or it may be sometimes you have like some kind of memory about what happened in your ancestor, and you can connect, I would say, to the feeling. You can never remember, I would say, it's not like especially something visual, but again, like you said, the body stores information. Yeah. So sometimes you're able, and I was able to reconnect to a sensation. I have no idea. And I'm half Cambodian, half French. And in Cambodia, I don't know if you know, but it was like a big genocide over there. So my father was rescued from that. He was a refugee from Cambodia because of the genocide. And when I was connected basically to my ancestor, I was just trying to connect to, how does that feel, if I just think about my grandfather, my grandmother. Yeah. And then there's like this huge, fear about being killed, being different, having money because they've been killed because they had money. Yeah. So all this thing, it was like, wow, okay. I grew up in France. I have no idea that those emotions and those beliefs were so strong because of that.
And they're in you.
It is in you. You cannot deny it. I mean, I know like some doctor might say, it's in your head. Whatever it is, it's still there. And I can guarantee you 100% that it has an effect on you.
Yeah. It's interesting. I could go also way into that because I also had situations where I would feel, like ayahuasca, DMT, and suddenly, for me, in a nutshell, I felt a collective pain of all women ever, went through the same situation. And it was so overwhelming because it was way bigger than me. But I would feel it in every cell of my body or like collective pains of wars.
Yes.
It can be very overwhelming, but we can still, we have a lot of information in our DNA
we have
stored
a lot
that we are not consciously aware of.
Yeah.
But if we go into our subconscious and truly go into this relaxation mode, and once we feel it, it's heavy, it's deep, it's so much bigger than us because it's coming.
But I would say start with your own life before, because a lot of people, they come in the journey and again, it's kind of, for me, an avoidant pattern to try to say like, oh, I want to know what was my, past life, or I want to do that. Oh, I'm feeling so much pain for all the women. And I'm like, sometimes it's a bit like you want to focus on the pain of the world. But it's still, an avoidance pattern. So it's like, focus first on your life. Heal the traumas from your life.
There's enough of them already.
There's enough. You will see, it will take times. Once you've done that, then you're able to, and I believe that actually, we all interconnected. When you do ayahuasca, I've done ayahuasca, and that's the message that I get is like, wow, on the surface, it looks like we all individual, but basically it's like the trees, we all interconnected. When I learn something, you learn something. When I heal, you heal a part of someone else, on a subconscious level again. So it is important, but I would say in the journey, like start with your own healing, your childhood, what happened with your parents, like there's a lot already, If you don't do this job, don't try to go, further down. That's, I would say like that's trying to bypassing.
Subconscious coping mechanisms not to deal with your pain.
Exactly. And you see that a lot in spirituality. Sometimes it's trying like to heal everything, and creating a lot of things around. But first, dive into yourself and you will see that you will understand better yourself. And once you kind of clear, I would say, all this channel, you're able to receive more information, more clarity which who you are, with why you're here. And that's a beautiful journey. So
it's hard. It's hard to confront your deepest pains and triggers, because obviously we don't want to go there, because we didn't want to go there in the first place when it happened. So our system shut down. And to then, after so many years, of repeating the same cycles over and over, then still go back there. But it's necessary. There's no way around it.
There's no, to be honest, for me, I don't know another way. And what is funny is like, I know like a lot of people, I do like breathwork session, and breathwork session is basically breathing deeply to actually trigger the nervous system to feel truly like the traumas. And, even people who are very skeptical, they come, guy like, very like, I would say in the alpha mentality, like, oh, I don't have nothing to deal, I'm fine. And they breathe, and all of a sudden like, oh shit, I have tears coming. What is this emotion? I never know. Oh, I feel anger, and then you start to realize like, look, any man or woman on this earth, adult, was a little kid. And I always said, we basically children hurt from other children, so your parents at some point were children also, and they've been hurt. And it's generation and generation and generation. And now I'm asking you, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep the cycle? Or I guess it's our responsibility right now to say, okay, now we understand all this kind of thing. We have the science to understand that. It's not a woo-woo thing. It's something very scientific that you can understand, that you can measure. And emotion is not woo-woo. It's part of who we are, and we need to deal with that.
We're emotional beings. We cannot deny it. We cannot do anything against it. We just are. So, it's our system. We need to work with how we are programmed, and sometimes, understand the program better to reprogram it ourselves.
And when you think about it, like, emotion is what? It is a frequency.
It's a frequency.
So frequency is what basically go into the field, and that's the information that you're carrying and you're projecting in the outside world. So as long we always into this guilt, fear, this is vibration that we kind of creating this world. So
we'll
if you want to change,
exactly the same frequency.
And we're creating this kind of world that we have today, and we're like, oh yeah, the world is dangerous. Of course, because we're still living, in this kind of survival mode. But the moment you understand the power of your emotion, and that the more you work on your emotion, the more you raise up the frequency of the emotion, and the better you start to creating new reality into your world, you're like, wow, life is fucking magic actually, you know? So I think it's worth to confront your emotion, your fear, because the outcome is just so magical. And I can see the benefit that it brings into my life or to the people that I work with. And it's just, to be honest, when I start this job, I would never think about that. I think that it was about like how emotion has an impact on your reality.
Yeah, creating the reality of what you truly want.
Exactly. But you cannot create a reality. Like in your brain, you're like, I want to be millionaire. I want to have like a good relationship. But inside you, you're vibrating with fear, with, you know, trust issue. And you're like, but man, they're all dangerous, or the world is dangerous. But I want to be like happy. It doesn't work like that.
As long as you still have these low frequencies, even on a subconscious level or on different other levels stored, they're vibrating whether you want to or not, you know, on a subconscious level, and you will attract the same frequency in return. Yeah, it's such an interesting topic. Also, that's how law of attraction works, you know. So.
But the problem with the law of, I don't like the law of attraction because it put people, you know, into the space that they are still like a kind of victim, like attracting something. And I prefer to say law of creation, because you are the creator. You are the one who creating this emotion, you know? So it's basically the same concept, but when you reverse it, I think you can understand it better. To understand that it's not something that you're going to attract. It's something that you're actually creating.
Right. I mean, the attraction happens from whatever frequencies we have inside. They attract.
It's a resonance.
It's like magnets.
It's a resonance. Exactly. It's magnetic.
So we will attract the same frequencies. And if we function and operate in a low frequency emotions, you know, guilt or fear, we will attract these situations. So also the power of selective attention is so powerful, you know, like if you solely focus on a vision or a deep emotion, we can truly go into that. That's the only way to truly go there, right? So if our focus is scattered all over, it's really hard to go to specific places that we need to go to heal.
Of course.
Okay, question. Why can we only access the subconscious on such a deep level to reprogram it when we're relaxed? Why do we need this deep state of relaxation? And how do we get there if we are programmed in such a fear and anxiety and trust issues, and we don't we want to trust because we want to heal, but also our system doesn't trust.
Yeah, I get it.
So how do we break in the door of trust? Is a huge topic.
It's
I feel like
question.
a lot of people are affected by trust issues for many reasons.
I love that question. Breath is the key. You know, I mean, I studied breath for a long time. I was staying in India for 5 years, and I was doing yoga, pranayama, and all this kind of thing make me understand, like, wow, the breath is the only thing you can do consciously and unconsciously. Sometimes you're breathing, you're not even, you know, aware of that. But if I'm starting to ask you, focus on your breath. Take a deep breath into your nose, deep breath out to your mouth. You do it consciously. But for the past like 20 minutes we're talking, you're not aware of your breath. So I always say that this is the bridge in between your conscious and your subconscious. And I like to say, like, what we're doing basically is like bring consciousness into your subconscious. That's how you're gonna improve your life. So when you breathe, you're sending the information that everything is okay. So you agree with me, when you are scared about something, what happened with your breath?
When we're in stress, our breath gets short and we stop breathing.
Exactly.
So we contract.
Exactly. So that's the reaction mechanism that, okay, there's a danger, there's stress, we start to breathe fast, short, and sometimes we stop breathing.
Yeah. Why is that?
This is how it works. I cannot tell you why, you know.
It's just
but I would say it's an automatic response, and it's also to focus your energy, you know, to go into your muscle in case you have to fight or to fly. So you need to focus. So all the energy is basically like focus and go, and that's why the heart starts to pump, because you need to be reactive if you need to fight or if you need to run away. Everything, all the energy needs to be into the muscle. Yeah. You know, so I would say that's the reason why it happens. But once the moment you start to breathe deeply and slowly, you are sending all the information and all the energy basically is like, oh, okay, we can relax the muscle and stuff like that. And that's where you're creating safe space and you're sending the information to the nervous system that, okay, there's no danger, we can relax. You know, so breath is really like for me, the most powerful tools you have. And when you do a breathwork session, I don't know if you try, you will understand the power of your breath And it's kind of crazy because breath is so simple, and it's
Yeah.
accessible, and you never think that it's as powerful as that.
It's one of the most powerful
Yeah.
tools. And as always, it's the simple things that we all have,
Yeah.
and we overlook them because they're so
Exactly.
simple.
Exactly.
And how can we go into the subconscious through breathing? I experience it. I love
Yeah.
breath work, and it's always so different and overwhelming because it takes you on
Yeah.
its own journey,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
need to surrender and see and feel where it goes, and
Yeah.
kind of let it go wherever it needs to go, because that's, I guess, where you need most healing. It's like activating the self-healing systems of your
Yeah.
own body, the own intelligence we have. Maybe you can tell us how.
Yeah, sure. When you think about that, if you stop breathing, like in few minutes, you're not longer here. So in the Hindu philosophy, you have this thing that we call the prana. And prana basically is connected like how you circulate this vital energy. And that's the energy that basically keep animals and you alive. So if you stop breathing, you stop basically to activate this life force energy that is circulating in you, and you cannot live. So if you think about it, breathing is actually the most important energy that you get into your body. You can get it to food, you can get it, to drinking water, but you can stop drinking, for a couple of days, stop eating for a couple of weeks, but you cannot stop breathing for more than a couple of minutes. I would say, understand, for me, breathing is really your connection to the universe. It's basically you feed yourself and you connect your body to the life force energy that is all around you. That's why it's so powerful.
Beautiful. Let's talk about life force energy. Let's talk about Kundalini,
Yeah.
which I'm really intrigued. I never tried, but
Okay.
I see all these videos of
Yeah.
people shaking and screaming
Yeah,
and
yeah.
being in their subconscious, I guess. What exactly is happening? Maybe we can demystify.
We can demystify. I mean, it's a huge topic, in itself. We can talk about that, and there's a lot of controversial idea about Kundalini. People will tell you, oh, it's dangerous. You should not do this, do that. I had my Kundalini awakening 12 years ago, but by myself. It just happened. I was living in India at this time. It just happened, I don't know, through meditation, through doing yoga, and I guess at some point, this thing happened in me.
So what exactly is happening?
Again, I would say, for me, what you feel is just energy in your body. And it's kind of like the intelligence of this energy. You agree with me that when you're a baby, you're not controlling about what's going to happen. You're not controlling if you need to walk or stuff like that. All this kind of thing is instinct. You know what you have to do. And the baby become a baby. The human being is not going to become I don't know, a lion or, a rabbit, So there's an intelligence that knows exactly which cell, how to create it. This is life force energy. There is an intelligence we need to acknowledge, and we need to stop thinking it's woo-woo again, because I always say science didn't create life. It's not the science that creates life.
Science tries to understand it, and science also keeps changing over the years. If we
Yeah.
look back in history,
Of
it
course.
contradicts each other all the time.
Exactly. So we need to be just humble, I would say. And I love science. I mean, I'm someone I always trying to understand science, and I think it's great. But we need to be humble to understand that science is just a limited perception from what we can understand right now. And in 50 years, we're going to understand more and more and more. And that's great that we're going through this way. But I would say life didn't wait science to exist. And what I feel like Kundalini, or in Hindu tradition, we call it like that, but it's not specific to Hindu tradition. I've heard about that in Philippines, I've heard about that in South America, but they call it a different way, or Egypt or China, It's just the life force energy. Is basically, we can demystify it in saying that this is just the intelligence that is inside you that knows how to create life. That's it.
Is it the same for male and female?
Yeah. Just inside that, I would say, we're always talking about the feminine energy, masculine energy, but what we want is to connect both of that. You know what I mean? Life exists through feminine and masculine energy, not one. Without the other one, it doesn't exist. Life doesn't exist. So we need always these polarities that work together. And I would say when this thing happens, I guess it's just because your body starts to reconnect through, I would say, the origin, the source. And you start to think with your ego. You stop to identify yourself and being oh, I'm this nationality, or I'm this religion, I'm this gender. And you start to understand more life about a flow of energy, about us. Wow, okay, the plant actually is also living, and I can respect that, and I can understand that inside me, actually, I have the same connection if I want, but you need to dive inside you and not being obsessed with outside.
Yeah. What is this shaking, this vibration that is happening in people?
Yeah. So also understand that, again, that's my experience. I'm not saying, that's the truth and I'll let you resonate or not with that, because it's a big topic and we have to accept that we don't really know. But what I feel and what I experience, it's a healing energy. This energy, when it starts to come inside you, what it makes you realize is, like I said, you're connected to much more bigger than just your ego. Like what you experience as a human being, it's an experience. We're not trying to deny this experience. We're not trying to be in the air and say like we're not in the body. No, you're in this body, but after this body or inside this body, you're also more than that.
I love how Joe Dispenza always says we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Exactly, completely.
So in us, we we have spirits and we can actually leave our body.
Exactly.
We can come back, but our human form is limited. Yes.
Yeah, it's limited and it's a nice experience also. We're not trying to deny it, but we try also to remember that we're not only that. And I think Kundalini is a really great experience when it starts to come and to rise inside you. It is also a healing energy. So the shaking, what I understand is also there's a science behind that, is the nervous system. When both nervous systems, so we were talking about sympathetic and parasympathetic, basically start to work together. Because for most of the people, they're or in one or in the other one. But there is some studies that shows that basically when you start to enter in this state where you're able to work and activate both nervous system at the same time, that's where like the Kundalini start to rising, and then you start to have your healing intelligence that is starting to reset everything and start to show you, oh, look, this trauma, you think like you were a victim, you are not. It was like basically your learning, it was your lesson. Stop to think yourself as a victim, and you choose this incarnation somehow to live through that, to understand the lesson, but you're not a victim.
So you're getting new information, healing information.
New information, yeah.
How does this information come to you? Is it visual or auditory?
It depends people, I would say. Some people are more visual, so sometimes you have it happened the same thing that in hypnosis, but basically I would say it's intuitive. And I have some clients, they say, oh, I was connected to the Kundalini and I have all this shaking, sometimes you don't have shaking actually, you're not moving. But people have like a big visualization and remember, oh, I was able to talk to my father that passed away and it was beautiful and I was able to, now I feel more at peace. Oh, I feel like there's something of this human experience, and they feel like when you pass away, it's not the end. And a lot of people, kind of have the same idea about what is life and afterlife, and they feel like less scared about death. So when you understand that, you feel like, okay, that there is something that is trying to teach you. And I think we should, like you said, demystify like Kundalini. And I think also something that is important is don't think because like you have the awakening of the Kundalini, it means that you're a Buddha or, and because a lot of people, what I see is like they start to do a session and they start to have this movement, these mudras, and they think like, oh, I'm God, you know what I mean? And I don't have to do, and there's a lot of spiritual ego into that. That's like, I would say, the downside. When you need to understand, like, when there's an awakening, when you think about that, when you just awake, this is the beginning. It's the start. You're just a baby, and Mariah, you're touching everything and you're shaking and you think that it's just the beginning. I can tell you, it happened 12 years ago now, and it's a long journey. Yes. And you're still learning, and I'm still learning with that.
And the more we go on our spiritual journey, the more our ego is going to try to also disturb us. It's always this eternal war of light and darkness, So the more we go into the light, the more
there's shadow.
the more there's shadow, and I mean the whole universe is trying to balance itself out all the time, right? Yeah. Through wars and peace, and even we have it in ourselves, So sometimes we need something bad to happen for us to go on the other extreme, into our healing journey, into awakening, into realization. So, it's interesting. So I guess it's inevitable that some people their ego is going to come out,
It will, but I think it's part of the journey. Also, maybe they need to experience that, but I would say just to make it simple, like Kundalini for me, no, it's not dangerous, not at all, because it's your life force energy.
What are the dangers? Like, what are people saying?
So most of the people will tell you, oh, you're not supposed to wake up your Kundalini, it's only for certain people. But you need to understand the origin of that, because I was living in India, and it's only in India that you have that. And now what I feel is like the Western world, because they're learning Kundalini through mostly the Indian culture, they basically spreading this word saying, oh, it's dangerous because they heard from the guru that it was dangerous. And I heard that. I was in India and some guru were telling me, oh, it's dangerous. You have to be careful.
Why? Why is it dangerous? Is it like... Because I don't know if you know about like astral projection, astral traveling, and on different like dimensions. I also heard that's dangerous because if you don't know how to come back, you can get lost.
So it's another topic. So so much. It's not about that, but for what I heard, a lot of people will tell you like, oh, if the Kundalini is coming and you're not prepared for that, it's going to be painful. And it is painful for most of the people all the time that is resisting to it. I mean, if your ego is very strong, and you're still scared about a lot of things, Kundalini is going to be like a new energy tell you, hey, stop being scared. Stop thinking like that. You have to see your shit. And some people, they don't want to see it. It's like psychedelic. If you do an ayahuasca retreat, it's very powerful. And it's not dangerous in itself, but if you're resisting to it, it's going to be very painful. You know what I mean?
It can be dangerous in the way that it can re-traumatize you. If you're not finding the key to the surrender.
Yes. And then that's where I would say, but it's like anything where it's dangerous is like when you don't have the proper understanding. So Kundalini is the same. It's like, of course it can trigger you and it can put you during the session, connect you to a trauma. Because again, when you think about it, the only way to heal a trauma is to reconnect to the trauma. And that's where I would say we need more people who understand this concept. So we can help people when they're connected. You know, in breathwork is the same. I have people reconnected to the trauma. But I'm not scared of that because I know how to help them to get out from the trauma.
That is really important to have the right support system in place also, because if you're again by yourself in this re-traumatization, then again your body is doing exactly the same.
Exactly. You will reinforce like basically the trauma. So I get it, I understand.
Yes.
That's the thing that somehow is dangerous, but like anything, it's like when it's powerful, if you don't control, like you don't know how to drive a Ferrari, it's dangerous, you know what I mean? Because it's powerful. But if you have the right license, you know how to drive it, then it's something powerful and you can, you know, drive faster. Kundalini is the same. I would say it is a shortcut to help you to heal. But if you resist to it, if you're not ready for it, if your body is not prepared to it, somehow it can in some case, like you say, like breathwork, like anything, like going in a hypnotherapy session, you know what I mean? I can reconnect you to the trauma, and if the therapist is not basically having enough knowledge, then it can be also dangerous. So I'm saying just that we need to be, explain why it's dangerous, and not saying just dropping that it is dangerous. No, it's not dangerous in itself, but this
under
is like
certain conditions specifically to you and your triggers.
But I think why I don't like this message is because you are saying to the people basically that their own healing power is dangerous. And when you keep people away from that, and for me, what I understand in India, understand that there's a lot of castes, and the people who knows about Kundalini were the higher caste. You understand? So now you understand the concept, like tell to people, make them fear their own power.
Of course.
So you can control them.
That's how all of our system works.
Exactly. So that's why I'm just like being cautious about that. It's like, yes, you need to be cautious when you use that. But once you understand also why it's dangerous, then you can avoid the danger. But if you're just saying it's dangerous and you're like, oh, no, I don't want it, it's your own power. Why would you like avoid it? You know, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, there's different ways, right, to awaken this Kundalini. I mean, there's slower and more natural ways, and versus, you know, psychedelica, I would really say to be careful with psychedelica, because to me it was too fast, too quickly, too deep. It's
just, again, not for everyone. Just listen to yourself, because for me, psychedelics is just wonderful. Again, when you use it wisely, and for the people who are ready. If you push someone to say like you have to, you must to, or maybe it works for you, but it's not going to be good for your brother or your family, because they're not ready. They don't have the same understanding.
Or it's just too fast. You know, it rips you. It's an outside influence. Like if you meditate, for example, you can get there at the same, you know, space, but it's going to take way longer. But you can kind of have more control, I guess.
Of course, you have control. You don't have control with psychedelics.
No.
You know what I mean? I've done it, and I can tell you, for me, it's a teacher. If I do ayahuasca, I use like psilocybin or stuff like that. But because I guess my body is ready, and you know, I don't have this fear. So when I go, for me, it's just a teacher. It's like, wow, okay, I understand this. But of course, I don't want to rely only on that. And I will do my meditation, and I keep doing breathwork. So I think it's all those, understand like Kundalini, psychedelics, breathwork. hypnosis, it's tools.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's always you, your own healer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's the most important to get. Like, they are only tools. It's not because you work in your Kundalini that you're going to become Buddha, stuff like that. No, stay away from this kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Understand that you are your own healer. That's the most important. And use it wisely as tools. Maybe sometimes you're going to be ready for this. Sometimes you're going to try that. And it's just going to bring you, like, whatever you need to know if you listen to yourself.
Yeah. How do we reprogram really deeply ingrained beliefs?
Mm-hmm.
Because only if we truly believe in something, it's
Yeah.
going to help. Same with believing that I have the power to heal myself.
Yes.
And even like limiting beliefs, let's say, for example, you grew up in a very poor environment.
Yeah.
So you get this belief deeply ingrained that you are poor. And now, later in life, you understand consciously, no, I want to be abundant.
Yes.
I want to integrate this new belief.
Yes.
How do I do it? How can I override such a deep, it's probably the same system.
It is the same system.
But about the beliefs, also like truly believing
embodying like this new belief, you mean?
Yeah.
And I get it, because for me it took me years to understand.
Because it's also the placebo effect, right? Even if a medicine per se isn't working, if you truly believe it's going to work, you activate the energies that are healing.
Of course.
So
in the end, that's what I was saying. You are your own healer, and all those kind of stuff is just something to help you, to give you a push with the tools. And it depends, like you say, it depends your belief system, you know. That's why maybe Kundalini, for some people, they come. If you have a strong belief that, I believe only what I see, I don't believe in energy and stuff like that, and you're gonna come to a session and you're just gonna stay stiff like that. Nothing's gonna happen, because you're not opening your system to receive what is needed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but how can we recondition? Because that's also conditioning, to not believe, not trust. So how do we? How do we recondition the worst of the worst beliefs?
Mm-hmm.
And even like people, let's say, on the spectrum of narcissism, sociopath, psychopaths that don't feel anything. Is it possible to reconnect even those people to recondition that deep of?
You need to understand, like, if you're a psychopath or narcissistic, you know, all this kind of, I would say, like, disorder, if we can call it like that, it's, again, defensive mechanism. So
coping mechanism.
The person become narcissistic because he's trying to defend something. For most of the time, sometimes I have clients like that, and you can see that there's always, you know, sexual abuse, violence. There's something that traumatizes the system so much that they're creating this feel. I do believe that when you grow, you come on this world as a white paper. You know what I mean? No one is bad. So when you see a bad person, you need to give compassion to understand. I'm not saying we give excuse and it's good what you're doing, you know. No, of course it's not good, like, to traumatize people again and again. But understand where you come from. I think it's very important to let them, you know, deal their own also journey. Yeah. I believe it's possible, but it's a lot of work. And also it's important to understand you cannot force someone to heal. Right. So they need to go through their own process. Seeing a narcissist heal is going to take time, because he's so much defensive. Sometimes you walk with them and they're going to, like, blame you, you know, as a therapist. It's like, you're trying to, I don't know, no, I'm not, I'm trying to help you. But they don't believe that someone is here to help them, because they grew up in a system where they can only rely on themselves. So I believe it's possible. For sure it's possible, but it's going to take a lot of time, because, like you said, the coping mechanism is so ingrained into them, and it's against actually the self-healing process. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why it's very difficult.
It's like being stuck in the cycle that goes even against your own survival in a way, and hurting others in the process. It's not good system to be in.
Exactly. But in the end, I would say, like, the best way to heal is to feel different. I like to say, you know, the quality of your life depends on the quality of your emotion. You know, so how you reprogram the mind, it's always the same. It's not about what you're saying in your brain. It's about, okay, I'm going to teach my system, my nervous system, to create new hormones. Yeah. And the brain to receive different hormones, because we are addicted to our own emotion. So if you're always, like, you know, letting some cortisol, you know, for the stress, or adrenaline, all this kind of thing, you're not going to heal. You need to balance that. Yeah. You need to regulate the nervous system.
So, what about addictions? So like, addictions work a lot with our dopamine system. It's like the food for our feel good, and it's a quick fix usually. So it's really hard to get out of any addiction just because we have our rewards all the time, you know? So basically to replace one addiction, we need to replace it with something that is at least equally gives us an equal reward, if not better, which is really hard to do, let's say, for alcohol or drugs that gives you such a dopamine.
Addiction, actually, it's the same. Why you getting an addiction? And I deal a lot of addiction, you know, hypnosis is very powerful for that. So it's not something, of course, that you're going to just, you know, snap your fingers and it's going to go away. But you just going to teach your brain to seek for dopamine somewhere else and understand. And it's reprogramming. It's just like right now, you think that because you're going to smoke or because you're going to drink, that's going to give you what you need. But once you shift, again, it's a belief.
Yeah.
You know, it's a belief that you have created. So once you shift the perspective and you shift again also the emotion, because what is funny is like most of the people, they will tell you like, actually, I feel shit when I, you know, after I have a hangover and I hate that. But at night, when I feel alone or when I want to socialize or the social anxiety that I have is like, I have to take, but it's a belief. But once you kind of like, with a good therapist, that's where, you know, you get interested because you, as a therapist, I'm here to help the person to have another perspective. It's like, oh, you believe that actually you feel good with alcohol, but what happened the next day? What happened is, you need to seek and understand the conflicting belief. And it's kind of you reinforcing, you know, the thing that is wrong and realize the brain like, oh, but that's true. And now anticipating also like the negative, you know, effect and to feel more the negative effect. So the decision will be different.
Yeah.
The action will be replaced by that's not worthy to take alcohol. That's the only difference that between me or someone who is, you know, having this addiction. It's just like me, my brain is like, yeah, I know it's not worthy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really possible. And I think you have also to change the mindset because a lot of people say, it's hard to quit. It's not that hard the moment, again, where you want it. If you don't want it, of course, you're never going to change.
True. Our brain is so funny.
It is.
Even like the selective attention on, in the worst case scenario, that we still look for like the justifications of, no, it's still good because we want to feel comfortable, right? So we try to like justify even the worst behavior or the worst addictions that it's okay. Until it's not. Usually when real change is happening or this will, like you said, this true will to change something, usually happens, unfortunately, when we really hit rock bottom and lose a lot, and then we suddenly wake up.
Yeah, it's always like that.
It's so sad, but it's true that we need this sometimes to really fall on the ground with our face down and then like, whoa, it's now I need to change something, you know?
Yes, and that's why, I mean, that's part of life. That's why I say we're always growing through shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's the moment where you have your toxic relationship or, you know, you have a hard breakup, you're losing your job, you're losing someone, you know, and that's the moment you start to question truly like, oh, is it my life? Is it what I want in my life? It's just part of life. And I think part of your healing journey is start to accept, you know, the negative thing that happened in your life, but start again to change the perspective and understand that it's not something negative. It's something for your growth. But there's two options. Or you want to see it as a victim and say like, oh, why me? Or you start to understand as a lesson and start, oh, okay, that's going to make me a better person. And I'm going to enjoy life because I understand the lesson. And it's always like that.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah, I think that's the key, actually, that I found in my life, to see everything as a lesson, just to embrace.
The question is like, what is the outcome? You know, you see it as a punishment, you're going to keep feeling miserable and a victim and you're powerless, you know what I mean? Or you start to change the same thing and you change the vision and you start to feel powerful and feel like, wow, it's a lesson, I can improve, you know, I can impact people, I can help people, I can understand and feel better with my life.
Yeah.
It's just depend on the outcome you want. So I say everything is belief, actually. I'm not saying this is true, but there's no truth for me, you know what I mean? It's just a question of perspective. Just think about what is the outcome you want in your life and choose the belief that is positive for the outcome you want. That's it.
Yeah. Beautiful. That was a good wrap up. I have one more question. Why do you do what you do? And why is it important for the world?
I do what I do because first it was for my personal journey, you know. I had also like a lot of challenge in life, and I had to understand my emotion. I had a lot of anger when I was young, and I grew up in the suburbs of Paris, where there was a lot of racism, a lot of violence in my neighborhood. So I start to understand, I don't want this life, you know, I don't think I'm here like and spoil my life. I think there is something that I need to understand. So that's where I start to understand that I need to deal with my emotion. So yeah, that's why I'm doing that. And why it's important, truly I believe that's the most important path that we can have in our life today. Yeah.
Yeah. Understanding our emotions
Yes.
and embarking our spiritual journey with this higher vision and creating reality
that we want.
That we want in our core. Yeah.
And from a place of safety and not, survival.
Yes. Yes. Anyone in the world, a question that everyone should ask themselves.
I like to ask to people like, what do you think, how would you like to impact the world like in a more positive way? What do you think you can do? And what would you like to say to people to have a positive impact?
Yeah. Beautiful.
Good.
Thank you so much for being
Amazing.
here. We covered a lot. Thank you for sharing your wisdoms, your lessons, your personal experiences.
My pleasure.
Most importantly, your personal truth. And I'm sure everyone learned a lot about hypnosis,
Hope so.
hypnotherapy, breath work. We covered a lot, Kundalini even.
Hope so. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.